Hi everybody, it's Alicia here from Unleash Fit Living, and tonight I'm very excited because I am having my first split screen guest coming along. It's going to be Amy Kate from the Mindful Collective. This is round 2, so hopefully we can actually get it to happen today. So tonight's topic, the topic of the video is going to be on the one thing that I wish I could change when it comes to women, busy women, and particularly mums, and their mindset and their self-perception. So this is something that I guess I have seen over and over again as I've worked with women as their trainer and coach, is that there is a really common struggle with self-love and a constant kind of negative self-talk and low self-worth, and it really saddens me because I think that it impacts on everything else when it comes to our health and our well-being. So that's what this video is going to be on. We're going to look at this topic, and I also am wanting you to check out the freebie that's in the link of this video. So yeah, you can definitely go to that link. There's going to be a freebie there that's going to be all about how you can actually put into practice some self-care practices, and that's courtesy of Amy Kate from the Mindful Collective being willing to share that with us. So yeah, I'm very excited tonight to invite Amy on, and I'm just going to wait to see if she's here, and if she is not quite, then I'm going to add her in. So yeah, look, this is the thing. When I jump in and I have my coaching sessions with clients, I often ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you say that you love yourself? It's not a question that you probably often get asked, but it's a really important one. And what has been really sad to witness is that many of the women, when I ask them this question, not only do they usually give a number under 5, but it's usually the point where they break down and they tears well up in their eyes because they realize that this is one thing in their life that they have not been practicing or putting into any kind of intentional effort, this concept of self-love and self-care. So that's what I want to explore tonight, is what is self-love, what is self-care, why is it important, is it selfish, and how do we actually do it in a really healthy way. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting my lovely guest on, but for some reason it's not coming up. So I'm just going to keep going until I see it come up with her name, and then I'm going to invite her in as well. So yeah, look, I've heard people say, and this is women that I've worked with, that when I lose weight, then I'm going to be happy, or when I look good in that bikini and I'm confident, then I'll feel like I'm worthwhile, or I'm worthy, or I'm enough. There's this real sense of discontentment in the now, and an unhappiness with who we are. And the thing is that is not going to necessarily change when the perceived problem is fixed, if it's weight, or it's usually around weight or self-image. So that's what I really want to explore tonight, is how we can actually do that. So Amy Kate has joined, which is awesome. So I'm going to actually give this a go and get her to, let's see. Yay. It's flashing, connecting. Yay!
We did it!
Oh, that's awesome. It was a bit of a job to get there, but we did it. Awesome. So, hey, Amy, so glad you could join us tonight.
Hello.
And I would love to just find out from you, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm Amy Kate. I am a psychologist. I work in Brisbane, and I'm really into preventative stuff. So not necessarily just the treatment end when someone has ended up with something that's more severe, but trying to prevent it, and particularly helping women.
Awesome. Yay, I love it. So what we do is I guess similar in the sense that you're dealing, really directly with the mental side of health. And then with Unleash, I'm looking at more of the physical side of that with fitness and food, and I definitely love touching on and focusing on the mindset stuff as well, because as you would probably know more than anyone, it's pretty much the start of everything. If that's not working right, then the rest is really not going to work so well either. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I was just, as you probably heard in the introduction, just talking about how I come across this certain mindset quite often with the women that I train, where there's this lack of self-care, lack of self-love, a lack of self-belief, really, just underlying their ability to be who they want to be and to achieve the things they want to achieve, and a sense of sort of not enoughness. So first of all, to our viewers, if you're watching and it's something that you relate to, I'd love you to just give a sad face, not a thumbs up, because we don't want to give it a thumbs up, but give us a sad face if that's, actually, that's probably not good, because when people look at the video, they'll see sad faces, but that's okay. It's all right. At least we'll know that you're on the same page. So in your practice, Amy, have you found a similar thing as well?
Absolutely. So many of the women that I work with are not necessarily always the root cause, but a definite contributing factor is low self-worth. And often it's, I mean, with stuff like depression, where it is at a clinical level, that's a massive thing, because that's a huge part of it, is that really hopeless, worthless side of things, which is not obviously how we want to live our sustained lives. So it's the kind of thing where it's super, super common, and that's why a lot of psychologists like me will use stuff like compassion-focused therapies so that we can actually get people to be compassionate towards themselves. Yeah.
Awesome. Really cool. So look, I'm definitely, hey, Bianca, awesome that you joined us. I'm not a psychologist by any means, so I would really love to hear just your not perception, but your take, I guess, on what you would define self-love as.
That's such a massive so from a research perspective, I guess being a psychologist, we're focused so much on research stuff. So from a research perspective, there's a million different derivatives of self-love. And there's so many different ways of defining it, whether it's high self-esteem or self-worth, and they all have technical definitions. So I'm kind of going to be sneaky and not actually give a technical definition, because there's so many of them. But every time I speak to someone in my practice, or even my friends, I'm have a bit of a reputation for sending random texts saying like, what do you think love is? What do you think hope is? And with self-love, it's super interesting because everyone has a different perception. Some people focus more on the words, some people it's more the actions, and for other people, they've got a completely different way of internalizing self-care, or self-love. So for me, I think it would be, in essence, being kind to myself the way that I would like to be kind to other people. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. So is there this is probably another huge question to ask, but what do you think, why do you think that this is so important? So if there's sort of an epidemic of a lack of self-love, or as you said, kindness to oneself, why is it so important that does get fixed or is corrected, particularly in women's lives and busy mums and things like that?
I think, without going a little bit too cliche, I'm going to go there anyway, the idea of having to put your own mask on before giving it to someone, like before helping someone else, although cliche, it is so true. And particularly women, and particularly mums, can be so focused on helping others and making sure that they're okay, and that sometimes their self-worth is actually dependent on the outcome of a child or a significant other or a friend. And so to be able to go, okay, I actually need to look after myself before helping someone else. And a way that I often explain to other people is, think about burnout. And usually the first things that they associate with that is quite negative. And it's like, well, if kindness isn't something that kind of comes up, then it's kind of indicating to us that it's not really a good thing. So if we end up to the point of being burnt out because we haven't been aware of ourselves, we haven't been kind to ourselves, then obviously we can't really
Yeah.
help anyone else. So that tends to be the driving factor that I notice the most with people actually
Yeah.
looking after themselves. Usually it's because they start to appreciate themselves when they reflect and go, hang on, when I'm not appreciating myself and being kind to myself, I'm actually not particularly helpful to other people. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Bianca, for that comment there about mother's guilt. It's
Yeah.
so true, and I'm sure that we've both seen that, is that mothers in particular just they are put last all the time over their children, and that is not a bad thing, and we're definitely not here saying don't do that.
No.
But I think what we're trying to tap on here is just the fact that if you are constantly put on the back burner and there's never any sowing into your own soul, that vessel is going to become emptier and emptier. And like you said, Amy, burnout's going to happen, and you're not even going to be able to serve the ones that you love either.
Yes.
So I've wondered too, like with this whole self-care, do you think that if we call self-love, and I know we're trying to get a little bit technical here, but if self-love is sort of to do with our own self-perception, we're not going to love ourselves unless we view ourselves as valuable. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think that there's also that, there has to be that awareness and that acceptance of who we are, I suppose. So unless we have that awareness, that acceptance of who we are, and then appreciating even the things that we might not completely love about ourselves, then it's really hard to maintain it long term. And that's when that kind of the pattern of behavior of always thinking about other people first instead of being a bit more balanced is when it can start to catch us up. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I've definitely had conversations with people about this concept, and often another thing that comes up is the question of, is self-love selfish? Can it get, I mean, we're talking about, I think we're on the same page. We get that self-love is being kind to yourself, valuing who you are as a person, and putting a priority on your own well-being. But can it be taken to a point of selfishness, or what's your thoughts on that?
Every now and again, I come across people who mistake high self-worth or self-esteem with narcissism, and it's a bit of an overused word. It's a very clinical word, and so it's really interesting that that's something that's overused. And if they're not the same construct, they're completely different psychological constructs.
Cool.
And so with narcissism, it's very complicated. It's a very complex situation to be in. It's all to do with relating to others, communication styles, the way someone views themselves, grandiosity. Just because you're kind to yourself every now and then doesn't make someone a narcissist. But it's genuinely something that people worry about. They worry like, oh, well, if I'm nice to myself and I let myself, have a cupcake now, then I might just start gorging on cupcakes all the time. And it's like, hang on, if you're actually mindful when you're eating that, and if you are measured, and a way of being nice to yourself is by letting yourself have the cupcake, but not gorging on them as well, because that's also not particularly kind to ourselves with the long-term stuff. So it's definitely something that people seem to be really concerned about, but they're completely different constructs. Yeah. So you can't really overdose, I suppose, on self-love to the point of causing massive issues, unless there's a lot of other things going on as well that are more clinical and more intense. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And the way I've sort of gotten my head around the self-love thing is that when it's coming from a benevolent point of view. So I read it actually in a book where they called it benevolent self-love. And what they were meaning by that is that it's self-love so that you can serve the others in your life even better. So it's not just for a selfish reason that you're putting care into your own self, but it's actually so that you can serve better. And there's that awesome saying that says, you cannot serve from an empty platter. So if, we're not filled and rejuvenated and just rested in our souls in whatever way that works for us, then we can't give in the people's lives that matter to us. And so when it comes from that angle, I agree with you completely that I don't think it's narcissist at all. to be taking care of ourselves, right?
Mm. Yeah, and back
Yeah.
to the typically cliche example that I used before of putting the oxygen mask on yourself before someone else. I mean, that's not a selfish move. When you start to think more logically along those lines, it's not a selfish thing to put it on you first before you put it on someone else, because if you don't have it on yourself, you're going to pass out halfway through putting it on someone else, and then you both don't have an oxygen
Yeah.
mask on. So looking at it more from that logical frame of mind can be helpful in getting people to check in with themselves a little bit about what is their motivation behind self-care. If it is that, oh, I just really want to, trying to think of a good example where someone might overuse it as an excuse rather than as an actual motivation, a planned thing, a valuing themselves thing more. Oh, I don't really want to do this, so I'm going to say that I'm, looking after myself. Well, yeah, that's not self-care because it's not coming from a values-driven place. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Awesome. Love it. So just moving on then to like ways to practice self-care. I thought I would ask first, what do you do personally for self-care?
The reason I laugh so much is that there are a few of my friends who are tuning in and they would be like, Amy is not the best for self-care. So it's one of those things.
That's all right. I'll be with you on that.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot of the little things for me. So I don't often have massive things that are really self-care driven. It's more the mindset that I use to try and look after myself. And I'm pretty good by now at figuring out the different things that I need to look out for when I'm starting to get to that point of, okay, my platter is getting quite empty. I need to go and stock up for a while and then get back into it. But the one thing that I found really cool is that, and again, I have a bit of a reputation for this one, is I call myself a dill. So if I've gone and done something completely ridiculous, instead of just bashing myself up mentally and just being like, you are such an effing blah, 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 I just go to, oh, that was a bit of a deal, so not really a worry, that'll be fine. And it just trivializes it, it brings it down, it makes it much more easier to cope with whatever's happened, because it's just like, oh, well, I've been a bit of a deal, that's hilarious. And another thing that I do that is a little bit different to a lot of the stuff that's kind of out there on self-love is that I kind of name the story that's going on in my head. So if I'm like, okay, I've got a story playing over, and this is a frequent one that so many people experience, I'm just going to get this one more work-related thing done, and then I can relax. Then I can go and chill out and do whatever I want for a little while. And then we get that thing done, and then it leads to something else, and then we're 5 hours deep, like exhausted, going, I need to sleep. So it's one of those things where I kind of know when that story's coming up. I know when I'm a little bit more susceptible to it, and I can be like, okay, no, nice story, hilarious, has got me to some pretty cool places, but is this now the time when I really need to use that as a motivation to do something? So separating myself kind of gives me a bit of a chance to make more of a conscious decision about what I'm doing, rather than just automatically following that story along and getting caught up in it. Another thing that I do this is at work. So if I've had some pretty interesting things going on at work, which does happen, of course, as a psychologist, you never know what someone's going to bring into you on that particular day and what you're going to be chatting about. So sometimes if it's been a bit of a difficult time, if someone's had something really big going on, it's completely impossible for me to not take some of that on. And so I have a bit of a dance party in my office and kind of put on a tune for a bit and just fingers crossed that the receptionist doesn't walk in and think I'm having a seizure. But it's definitely lightens it completely. It makes it much more fun. And it's also a way of, it's a complete break from what's going on. And I can just be completely silly, get a bit of physical movement into what I'm doing and have a bit of fun. And then probably the last thing that I do that is more that implicit, slowly going along rather than a planned activity, is that I find that in some situations, if someone starts talking, this is socially, so not obviously as in my work as a psych, But if someone starts talking about someone in a way that I'm not completely cool with, I know that that drains my energy a lot. So I get super exhausted, and then I start becoming really resentful, and I'm like, I don't want to hang out with that person again. That was really annoying. Yet I didn't say anything at the time to change the situation. I kind of just went in my shell and went, oh, okay, that's really awkward. So now what I'll do is just jump in with a compliment. So be like, oh, I really love your dress. And if you bring a lot of enthusiasm to it, people don't seem to mind.
Yeah.
So it's a way of kind of breaking it, and only genuine. I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it, but I try and jump in there with something that's a little bit more helpful and positive, so that it's kind of breaks that, and then we can kind of change track with our conversation more easily. So they're really small, bite-sized things, but because it's in my mindset and the way that I see myself, and because of that self-awareness, which is such a huge thing, I can sustain it, which is super useful. And that's what kind of changes it from being just a couple of acts of self-love that we're like, better get this over with. It's more the way you see yourself, exactly what you were saying before. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's awesome. Well, yeah, funny you mention. I definitely related to you at the start where you said that your close friends would actually know, and the same with me, what's actually true. So those of you that are watching, no comments, okay? Yeah, no, I am definitely a bit of a workaholic. But funnily enough, like to kind of just, like sort of detach and disengage, particularly on days when it's been at the computer a lot, like, I actually find getting in the kitchen and cooking, I actually find it really therapeutic. So for me, that's actually something I look forward to doing, and it's sort of a funny self-care practice, but I actually really like it. Another thing that works for me is I really like the concept that I came across, I don't know, in the last couple of years, and it's probably been out there for a long time, but just the simple idea of actually treating yourself as though you're your best friend. So for example, like you're not going to say to your best friend when they trip over and fall, oh, you friggin' idiot. Like, like you're not going to treat them like crap. Like when that happens, you're going to be like, oh, you're all right. Get back up. Oh, you're fine. Like dust yourself off. It's all good. And similar, I think, to what you were saying before, where you kind of make it light. And I really have been trying to practice that with myself too. Like a really kind of surface level example of that is that I'm actually a super clumsy person, and I think what's made it like come to life more is the fact that my husband is a really light sleeper, and he's a night owl, and I get up early. And so when I get up in the morning and he's still asleep, like I really try my best to be super quiet, like put the toilet lid down after I've gone to the toilet, like close the door quietly behind me as I leave the bedroom, all these things. But I don't know if it's when I'm extra tired, but I'm just extra clumsy. So usually like I'm trying to do all these really nice things, and I end up like knocking something off the bathroom bench instead, and like just making a massive noise. And like, but sometimes it's gone to the point where I've done like 3 or 4 of these stupid things in a row in one day. And I'm just like, what the heck is wrong with me? And sometimes it's like, it accumulates to the point where I've knocked like several glasses off the bench accidentally because I've been trying to do like 10 things at once. And those moments have been moments I've noticed that I can actually really be harsh on myself and just in my head be just telling myself like what a useless person I am. And even though that's a really surface level thing, I've at least become aware of that. And it's those times where I've really started to try to just make light of it as well, and just be like, hang on, like I'm just clumsy, I've accepted it. I'm not going to try and do something I'm not, like, and it's okay. Now obviously that's just a really like surface level example, but there's probably plenty of more times where it's maybe things we say in conversation, or it's mistakes we make at work, or it's relational things, decisions we've made that we regret, and or it could be the promises we've made to ourselves that we don't keep, like I'm going to get up in the morning to exercise 15 minutes earlier than normal, and then we don't, and then we just you know, this self-talk starts to play over and over in our head, where we're like, oh, you know, well, we may as well not bother. Like, obviously we're just like, we're pathetic. We can't even get up 15 minutes earlier. Those sorts of things. And that's where I think it really comes down to trying to reframe those beliefs, hey, and really working on, you know, what kind of language are we using when we talk to ourselves? If we were talking to our best friend, and back to the point that I was making, is that we wouldn't be putting our best friend down like that. We'd be speaking kind and loving words. And so it's, I guess, learning how we can actually make that happen on a mental level for ourselves. Is how can we make our self-talk kind and loving? And so, yeah, do you think that that's like a pretty important thing when it comes to self-care?
Absolutely. Because if we're not doing that, then we could be doing all of the self-care actions in the world and still being like, you're an idiot, you suck, you're really bad at everything, you're incompetent, you can never get this right, da, da. And then it's not self-care anyway, because it's pretty much just a solo bash sesh, which isn't exactly the point of self-care. So that's kind of the really key part of self-care, is that it needs to be, you need to be aware of what you're doing and what works for you. A thing that I hear a lot is that, like, watching TV, like someone will say, oh my God, my self-care is Offspring. It's so good, blah, blah, blah. I love doing it. I get a glass of wine, I sit down. And then when we start talking about it and go, okay, sweet. So tell me how you feel afterwards. And like, oh, but then this has happened. So then I'm a bit nervous about waiting for next week. And it's like, hang on, is this actually calming you? Because this sounds like it's actually stressing you out. And there are heaps of different types of self-care. So there's a self-care that kind of picks us up and gets us going, gets us moving. And then the self-care that kind of soothes us, brings us down. And so having variety in self-care is super important. So some people, a really cool example that you gave was cooking. Cooking's so cool because it has a beginning, a middle, an end, and another end, because you get to eat it as well. So with a lot of our lives and a lot of our, particularly careers, we don't necessarily have this is the start of my day, this is the end of our day. Studying's a classic with this. So people can just keep going and going and going, and you're always looking to the next thing, you're looking to move on, and your self-worth can be really based on that. Whereas cutting it back and going, okay, what's something I can do to look after myself right now that has an ending to it, that has a closure point to it. So I'm an absolute diehard fan of like the BBC style. This is so massive. It's so true though. The BBC style like murder mysteries, although I do like Criminal Minds as well, which is American, but I love like Midsummer Murders and all of those things, because they have a crime and it's solved at the end. So there's a problem, they figure it out, and it's ending. I don't like the ones that have more of the relational stuff going on, because I find that more distracting, and I don't feel like it's like a cliffhanger at the end with that, which is just so frustrating. But it's definitely really cool because it provides closure, and self-care, having closure to it is important, because we need that to help us feel like to try and make sense of situations. So that was something that I actually learned while studying and doing masters, that a supervisor mentioned to me and said, do you realize the reason you were so into these things, even though you don't watch them very frequently, is because they have an ending. Masters feels like it doesn't end. So it's nice to watch something that has an ending. So knowing why you like the particular self-care that you do is so important to help you really make the most of that self-care. And a lot of people like the idea of being efficient, because they don't want to spend an entire day in self-care, because they don't have time to, especially as a mum or someone working heaps. So that can be really useful to know, why is this effective for me? Get it in place and get it happening.
Oh, what a cool point. And that's cool because, it really makes sense for me now why I like the cooking thing, because you're right. Like, I'm working on ongoing projects that seem to sometimes never have an end, but to be able to stop and have a little like breather where I can actually do something that can be done within an hour or something, and be, start to finish, makes me feel some sense of just release and accomplishment and just therapy, I guess, of just, like, oh, at least I got something done today. I actually made something healthy for myself and experimented with a new recipe, and now I can enjoy it. So yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, just moving on, like I just thought, you have a really awesome resource that you've been really generous enough to share with our viewers and with anyone that clicks on the link in this video, and that's your self-care menu. And I absolutely just loved it when I saw it for the first time last year, I think it was. Can you just tell us a bit about that and why, I think it's such a great resource, but why you put it together and what it's got for us there?
Yeah, sure. So with the Mindful Collective and my business all around this kind of thing, and it kind of feels funny calling it a business because it's more a drive. I don't think I had much of a choice to do this. I think it picked me.
Yeah,
but
cool.
I've kind of found that a lot of people were choosing ways of looking after themselves that perhaps weren't as helpful. And so when I started asking people, what's something else you do? And it was like, good question. Can I have that as homework? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Is there anything else going on? And so that was, the way that I kind of came up with that and started looking at different resources that were available online. And there weren't many that I found kind of hit home for me, I guess, as a menu. So something that you can just look through, highlight the ones that suit you, and then plan them out, which is half the battle with self-care, is actually planning it and doing it. But
scheduling.
yeah, that's right. And that's part of it as well. So going in and deciding, okay, this is what could be useful. And when it has such a variety on there, a lot of people find that they'll cluster towards a specific type initially, and then they'll start introducing a few other types and getting a bit into it. So it goes from stuff that is more even like spiritual self-care, which is important, and that doesn't have to be a religiously based practice. That can be a gratitude practice or something that's a regular vibe that connects you with something bigger than yourself, or that's greater than yourself, all the way to physical stuff. As a bit of a cheeky laugh, the designer who designed it for me, Priscilla, put seeing a psychologist on there, which was a bit cheeky because I didn't pick that up until afterwards. But anyway, now it's on there. So she and there's space as well for people to pop their own ideas on there. So it's definitely about going, okay, well, perhaps if on a particular day you'd plan to go like hard out HIIT training, exercising, and you wake up and you feel absolutely ridiculous, what's a way of doing something else instead? Is it going and cooking yourself a nutritious breakfast with that time instead? Is it going for a walk instead? Like there's ways of swapping things in and out so that it's not so one-track minded. We've only got one thing that we're relying on.
Yeah, I love it. And it's just really cool because I think I listened to a talk on a totally different topic, but the bit that related was where if you take like one day out a week to just rest, stop, relax, for people who have a desk job during the week, that one day a week's probably not best spent just sitting around because you've done that all week. So you find something active to do that's, going to be uplifting, getting fresh air, getting outdoors, something like that. But then those who might work, some kind of a physical labor job, say it's a dude or something and he's a tradie, having that one day a week rest might be the day where he just kind of really relaxes and, spends time with family, sits by the pool, whatever. And so I think it really does play into what does our life look like for the most part? So what's something different that we can do to kind of get that cup filled again? Would you agree that that's kind of often how it plays out, is we need to kind of get a little bit of what we're not getting?
Yeah, exactly. And that is such a challenge with self-care because we go into it going, I've got half an hour to make the most of this time for myself before my kid usually wakes up or before someone comes home, or that's just all I've got today, that I need to do something else. Then we tend to go for things that feel comfortable and feel normal for us. And so it's consistent with how we generally roll. That's not necessarily what's best for us. And that's why the evaluating and having that awareness behind it is really useful about how do you actually feel after that particular type of self-care. Try something that you would never usually do. How do you feel after doing that a few times? Is that more fulfilling for you and more helpful than perhaps the one that you're used to doing?
Yeah, cool. No, I love that. Well, yeah, so just to kind of wrap it up, like just the take home message that we've sort of covered tonight is that number one, heaps of people struggle with self-love and self-care. Secondly, self-care is not selfish. It's actually something that is to actually feed our souls so that then we can give in the lives of those that we care about and the things that are important in our lives. And then thirdly, there are different ways to practice that kind of self-care as well. And it might look different for different people depending on what their lives look like, what their schedule's like, etc. And what's really cool is that there's this resource, again, that you can grab by going to the link in this video that's going to give you a bunch of ideas. So if this whole concept of like actually putting yourself first for once is new, then it would be awesome to grab that self-care menu just to give you some ideas of where to start. So yeah, just to wrap up, I'm really, really stoked that you could join and we actually made it work, Amy.
Yeah.
Really. Just before we sign off, where can our viewers find you on social?
The Mindful Collective. So search that on Facebook, Instagram, and online.
Great. Cool. Because, yeah, by the way, guys, I follow her and I love, she's got little quotes and just awesome, inspiring things about having a healthy mindset, healthy mental outlook and more self-care and self-love, which we all need. So please go and follow her on her social media outlets. And yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed it. Guys, if you've got questions, feel free to type them in. Obviously, this ends live soon, but we can always jump on and answer any questions to do with self-care and self-love in the future. But we really hope that you've gotten heaps of value out of this. And yeah, we would love to see you again soon. And hopefully we can hook up and talk about another topic sometime in the near future too, Amy. That would be great.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll catch you later. And thank you again for joining us. See ya.
Bye.
All right, guys, thanks again for watching. Yeah, we will catch you next time. If you've got any questions, just chuck them in the comments and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Bye.